In this video, we are going to take a look at Visual Studio, the Microsoft IDE, the Integrated Development Environment. I'm going to talk about some of the different historical versions of Visual Studio over the years and the different versions of it that are available today. I'm going to create our first Visual Studio project. I'm going to look at what all of the various buttons in Visual Studio do. And we're going to look at all of the parts of the simplest possible C# program. So Visual Studio started about 20 years ago now. We're on the 14th version. Now that's a little bit misleading because it started at version 4. There was a previous debugging project at Microsoft that got up to version 3, so that did make some sense. And they skipped version 13, both because of fear of the number 13 and also because it did not match quite right with the year. Visual Studio 2013 is the most recently fully supported version as of the shooting of this video. Visual Studio 2015 is in CTP 5. That's Community Technology Preview 5 is the one I have running on this machine. Preview 6 shipped 2 days ago. I haven't had a chance to install it yet, so we're going to use 5. But it should look almost exactly what Visual Studio 2015 will look like when it finally ships, which my spies on the Visual Studio team tell me should be sometime in 2015. Now, there are a lot of different versions of Visual Studio, not just historically, but there are what Microsoft calls the SKUs, the stock keeping units. And they're called the Express, the Community, Professional, Enterprise, Ultimate. I think there are a couple more in there that I'm missing. And the difference between them is they all have different feature sets, and they all have different prices. The Express Edition is free, which is very attractive. The Express Edition for Visual Studio 2013 and all of the Express Editions before it came in different flavors. So there was the C# Express Edition, and there was the Visual Basic Express Edition. And there was an Express Edition just for people who wanted to write software for Microsoft phones. For the Visual Studio 2015 Express Edition, it's not going to be tied to any particular language. There's going to be just one Express Edition that will be free. You can download it, install it on your machine, make sure to budget some time, takes a while. And then you can use it to build whatever kind of software you want. And the difference between it and the versions that you pay for are there are more advanced tools in the versions that you pay for. The versions that you pay for have performance profilers and more advanced analysis tools that you might not need if you're just a home hobbyist or if you're doing relatively simple work. All right, so without any further ado, let's just actually start up Visual Studio. I've got a Visual Studio icon on my desktop here. It says Ultimate 2015 CTP, Community Technology Preview. You can see that on the screen, it starts with a news feed that tells you about what's exciting and new in the world of Visual Studio. But the interesting bit that we want is there's on the left-hand side, there's a Start, New Project, Open Project. And there's also recently opened projects here. If I had any, they would appear there. So we'll just say New Project. Now we get this super complicated dialog that, first of all, on the left-hand panel, it's organized by language, right? So there's Visual C#. Visual C# is the marketing name that Microsoft uses for C#. Nobody actually calls it Visual C#. People do call Visual Basic, C++, F#, and so on. So all of the different languages that this version of Visual Studio supports. Then within each of those languages, all different kinds of projects that you can create. So we'll go down to Windows Desktop. And again, there are a dozen different kinds of Windows Desktop projects you can create.